Good morning.
Good morning.
Okay, and you are Dad, Ronald John Lidner.
That's me.
Okay, and what year were you born?
1934.
Okay, and on what date?
September 1st, 1934.
Okay. And did your parents tell you anything about the year you were born, 1934, what was happening in the world?
No, but I do. One of my earliest memories of anything was September 1st, 1936. I was 5 years old, and I remember my grandmother coming in crying and says Hitler just invaded Poland. It's September 1st, 1934. It's my earliest possible memory I can remember. I was 5 years old.
Okay.
It was my birthday party, and they were having a little cake, and she ran in crying. It was interesting. Go ahead.
And they were up on what was happening, and we're going to get to that in a little while because your family is Eastern European.
Well,
They were up on, they had family over there.
they had family. In fact, my grandmother was from there, yes.
Both sets. Okay, and what apartment or house, what was your apartment or house like where you were growing up?
5051 Henderson, Chicago, Illinois. It was a two-story brick flat with, they basically had 2 bedrooms and 1 made-up bedroom. The original flats were 2-bedroom, but they always made a third one out of one of the rooms. I was raised in a room that usually had somebody else. My grandmother lived in there, and later one of my aunts.
Which grandmother lived in there at the house with you?
Grandma Bells, Busha Bells,
Oh, wow, okay. And she was from where?
from Poland.
Okay. And she immigrated over here
Correct,
with her husband. Came over on the boat.
correct.
Okay. And can you describe the neighborhood that you grew up in?
Lower middle class working people. Typical of the area. However, there were, one of our neighbors was, the younger one was a school teacher. Most of them were, and actually we had a lawyer on the left-hand side, but these were middle class to lower middle class, a lot of working people.
Impressed. And were there a lot of people of the same nationality in your area? For example, the parish you went to for the German and the Polish population in Chicago at that
There
time?
was German, Polish, Italian. Was very very prominent. Absolutely, it was, for all practical purposes, would be described today as lily white. There was no blacks in the area, and not anybody that one or two Latinos, people with Spanish surnames, but they were rare. It was mostly European, some Jewish people. There were Jewish people, absolutely. But Italians, German, Polish, and Eastern European were dominated. Yugoslavians, like that.
Okay. Now tell me about your parents. Where were they born?
Both, my dad was born in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and my mother was born in Chicago, Illinois.
And your dad is Arthur Paul Linder,
Yep,
and he was born in 1908, lived till 1994.
that's correct.
Okay. And what did your dad do for a living?
He was a laborer, what would be considered a labor person. He ended up working with glass, making X-ray bulbs. They used to blow these glass bulbs. He even dabbled in glass blowing in his later years working there. He made little birds and things like that out of glass. But other than that, he labored. He worked on docks. He worked construction for a while, as I recall. Did a lot of shipping work on docks.
In Chicago? Or in the Milwaukee area?
Well, no, it was all Chicago. He came to Chicago at an early age. I don't know how much Milwaukee he did.
And his parents were Lucian Linder, born in 1873, and Rosalia Sobieski, born in 1876.
Right.
Now, do you remember these grandparents? Do you
Yeah.
remember Grandma Rose?
Absolutely, yes.
What
yes.
was she like?
She's a small, frail woman, and Lucian was a big guy. All I can remember, big, tall, in later years heavy, big man.
Tall?
Tall
Your
as
dad
I,
was tall.
huh?
Grandpa was tall. Your dad
Yeah,
was tall.
well, they were 6 footers. This guy was big, and he was big, heavy wise as well. When I remember him as a young one.
Yeah. And Lucian was born on December 25th, 1873, to his father Martin and his wife Eva, and Eva Marfaith, and they were,
They were German.
yes, they were German.
He actually fought in the Kaiser's army. He was a cook for the Kaiser
Okay.
in World War One.
And
Told
Rose,
told stories of cooking for the Kaiser.
and Rose was born in 1876. This was your grandmother,
Right.
and
She was the Sobiewski. By the way, the Sobiewskis were in Poland royal,
yes,
and
they were.
she claimed I
It's
don't.
the Osteoprussian.
Yeah,
There was a king Sovietsky.
yeah, right. And they were. She claimed some sort. I don't know whether it's true or not, but she claimed some royal heritage from the Sobiewskis.
Well, they were living in the Grudiec area of Poland, which is very, very beautiful. And then they arrived on the in 1885. No, wait a minute.
No, she couldn't have. She
No,
was
no,
born.
No, she was born. Right. She and Lucian married, and so they came over separately as teenagers or whatever on the boat.
And they met in Milwaukee
Yes,
someplace.
they did. No, they met in Milwaukee. Okay. And then they went on to have a lot of kids.
A lot of kids.
Mm-hmm.
7, if I recall.
Yes. And what about your mother is Estelle?
Right. She
Estelle
was a
Bells?
Bells. John Bells. By the way, the Bells name is German, of German Polish origin.
And it's Belz.
Belz.
And he
Bells.
married Anna Spurka,
Spirka, she was Polish. Yes.
1884.
They met on the boat. They met on the boat coming across.
Yeah. And what memories do you have of Anna Spirka, Grandma? And did you have a nickname for her?
Oh yeah, there was Busha, Busha. She was, of all my grandparents, I remember her the most. She lived the longest. We lived with her, and there was a time after her husband John died. He died when I was young. I can remember him dying. I must have been 5 or 6, 6 years old. But she lasted all the way to my teenage years when Al and I used to grandma sit her in Grindstone Lake in Hayward, Grindstone Lake, Wisconsin. We would go up there and spend the summer. She had a summer cabin up there, and she used to love to go to the North Woods, and I babysat her with Al babysat her, not babysat, but grandma
kept her
sat.
company and came up in the summers and took care of things that needed fixing.
She didn't drive.
She didn't drive.
So as soon as Al and I were 16 years old, either of us were 16 years old, we had a car which was lent to her by the kids so we could drive and bring her things. We would shop for her.
So she lived in Chicago and continued to live in Chicago, but she would summer
In
for a couple of months.
in a couple of months, generally June, July, and August,
Okay.
school years, Al and I would spend those months with her.
Okay, well, we'll get to that. Who was more strict, your mother or your father?
My mother.
And do you have a vivid memory of something that that you got disciplined for? Was she a strong disciplinarian?
I can remember coming into the house. I must have been about 16, 17 years old. It was like 2 o'clock in the morning. I walked through. I had been drinking. And
How
I
old
walked,
do you think you were?
16 or 17 years old. I opened the door because I had a key. I came home. I opened the door, and she slapped me right in the face. Right, smacked me in the dark. It came out of nowhere. And wacko, because she says I smell the alcohol. He cracked me right in
And
the
she
face.
wasn't gonna be having any of that.
No, no,
That
no,
was nonsense.
no.
And do you think that your parents had a good marriage?
They had a, looking in retrospect, yes, they stayed married till the end. There's a lot that could have been, if you read the books and all the stuff, that could have been better.
For the time.
For the times and what they did, they were okay.
They certainly
And
seemed to
they
enjoy
always
their life.
loved me and Al. There is no question that we were loved. I was loved and Al was loved. Al was loved more than I was. He was the blessing of the family, the baby. They all loved him. I too, I loved him.
Well, and
And,
we'll get to that in a little while. So, how did your family earn money?
My mother and father both worked, and Busha babysat us like we were going to school. Now we were a little older, we'd be going to school, and we'd come home at 3 o'clock in the afternoon from school, and Busha would be there until the parents got home about 5:30. They would be come home from work 5:30, and then we would eat. Yes,
Okay.
and everybody ate at the table at the same. These were the years before the modern stuff. You were home, and you would.
And what type of thing did your family spend money on? If they were going to spend some money, what did they spend money on?
They spent money on a vacation. We went up north.
So it was 19, now we're thinking it's like 1940, in the early
50s.
late 30s. And,
No,
and through the
You're
40s.
talking. You would be talking 1946,
Okay.
44, 45,
So they
46.
enjoyed going on vacation.
We would go up north, rent a cabin. We would do this with other in-laws, my mother's other sisters. All had like Eddie Cieslak liked to fish and hunt, and they used to go up to cabins up to Wisconsin, and we would do that. And they would always have a 2-week vacation. We spent it in the woods, and we did spend it fishing.
Okay, and do you have any sisters?
No sisters, me and Al.
Do you have a brother?
Yeah. Women were a mystery to both Al and I. We had no, other than Busha and my mom, that's the only female contacts we
Okay.
had. The other was all male.
Okay, and when was your brother born?
My brother was born in 1944.
And what memory do you have of him coming into the family, being born? You were
I nicked it when they
you were
brought
10
him.
years older.
Yeah, I was 9 years older, and he was. I remember them bringing him home, and he was all pink, and I called him Pinky, a name that he grew to hate.
Yeah.
He absolutely grew to hate that name, Little Pinky. I had a couple of my children called him Uncle Pinky, and he said, "Don't you do that anymore."
Okay. And you did have grandparents. We talked about that. You had Busha and John.
Yeah, John passed away at a relatively early age. I remember John. I don't
Do
remember
you
all.
remember him passing?
Yeah, and I remember John Bells and John Sobiewski, or John John Cross. My grandmother remarried. She divorced Lucian and moved to Chicago and remarried, and she remarried John Cross. So I had a John
Was
Cross,
he a nice guy?
a very nice guy. John was nice.
So he was a little bit more in your lives from that point
Oh
on.
yeah, much
Also.
more than Lucian. I remember John Cross more than my regular grandfather Lucian. I remember Lucian only as a young person and only in passing.
Did they speak any other languages in your home?
My grandmother spoke Polish with some people that came over. Remember, these were real Americans. They would talk, and if they told, we are Americans. We don't speak Polish. You speak. They'd tell Pete. Pete used to like to talk Polish.
And did they speak German?
They spoke a little German. I was able to understand some words. If they spoke slowly, I could understand the drift of what they were saying, both in German as well as in Polish.
I remember spending time with them and your parents, my grandma and grandpa, and if there was ever anything that all of a sudden they'd be speaking in another language, things that now later on we realize things that they didn't want us to hear,
That-
they would revert immediately to another language, and it would just be bantering back and forth.
Right, and little by
They would be
little,
speaking
little
English,
did they
would
realize
they would
that
speak English, and then it would suddenly be in German and Polish. It seemed like both. And
mostly
then,
Polish, and little did they realize that I got to understand it pretty well. If they spoke slow enough, I could get the whole meaning of it. Also, I learned how to swear and say bad words in Polish
did
as
you-
well as German.
Well, you had both of you are second generation immigrant. Your parents, on both sides, are first generation.
They were able to
They're-
speak.
Both of their parents came over on the boat, so you have four people in your family that came right down, that came over on the boat from Europe.
That's correct.
And what were you like as a child?
I was in wonder of everything. It was I grew up during World War II, and I remember, like I told you, I remember Hitler invading Poland. I remember listening to the news. I remember air raid wardens. My father was an air raid warden with a white helmet and a flashlight. I remember.
dad was?
I remember all
What
the.
is an air raid?
An air raid warden was a person that they would call blackouts, and you would black out all the homes, and he would walk around with a flashlight and make sure the homes were. I remember
What was the purpose of that?
in case of a raid,
Okay.
air raid, which never came, by the way,
Yeah.
which never came. It's surely not into anywhere near Chicago. On the other hand, they did have these along with drives. They would have paper drives and metal drives. You would take stuff at home, and you would, for war effort, you would take things that were made of metal, and you would drive in paper drives. You'd have
Okay.
paper so they could make paper, and they were having all the food drives.
All right. And what did you do for fun as a young person growing up in Chicago?
Played in fields. That's the
Where
first.
what was your running area? Where did you hang out? What avenues, streets, areas?
If you could imagine, we lived in the center between Belmont and Cicero and Belmont and Central. And Belmont was a east-west street. And there were vast prairies. Their homes were just going up. And there was a lot of empty lots. And I lived in these empty lots. And we had forts that we would build out.
You mean you spent your time there?
That was it. Me and the other kids
How
loved.
far away from that? Because everything.
It was
seems so
right
built up
between
in
the
Chicago.
houses. No, there wasn't. There was whole.
So we're
there was.
talking in the 1940s, and it was early on.
Yeah,
there.
yeah.
So you look at it today, and it's just.
There were
bungalow
they were
after bungalow.
filled with weeds and sunflowers, and the fields were covered, and we spent our time playing out there.
Okay, and what?
At night, I would listen to the radio.
I was
and
going
we-
to ask about that. Now, what did you didn't have TV at the time, so there would be radio. And what did your family spend time doing?
Listening to the radio.
What did you like to listen to?
Oh, that was great. I'm trying to think of the shows. Dun, dun, dun. This was the FBI.
Was it
That
The
was
Shadow?
one of them. The Shadow Knows. A whole bunch of them. If you were to
And-
mention
and
them,
was
I
the-
would. You could probably
Was
sing
whole
the
family
song.
sitting in the living room listening
Absolutely,
to the radio at that time?
absolutely. In the 50s, we discovered television.
And what type of school did you go to?
I went to a parochial school, a Catholic,
What was it called?
a St. Bartholomew's school, which was part of the St. Bartholomew's parish.
Is that the church you went to?
It was the church, and all our people went to that church.
And that was the school, but you also attended St. Ladislas further along?
On and
Or
off.
not?
That was where the Polish people kind of went. We went to St. Bartholomew's, which was the more mixed. A lot of German, Polish, Italian mix went there.
And did you have nuns teaching?
Absolutely. I was an altar boy.
And what were the nuns like?
The nuns were, some were sweet, other were, Sister Lorenz used to beat me up. I always remember her name. She was she's the one
And
that
when
I
you-
got,
and
I
when
got
you say
kicked out
beat
of.
you up, do you mean hit with a ruler?
Oh,
What do you mean?
yeah, slapped at times, but deserved every one of them, by the way.
And was that par for the course for kids if they acted up in school?
Absolutely.
The nuns had that right.
Absolutely. By the way, I got kicked out of altar boys, which really broke my heart, because me and Robert Schultz had a big fight in the recess, and blood was spilled in the thing. Robert attacked me, but I was the innocent part, but I got blamed anyway, and we both got kicked out of altar boys. And I loved being an altar boy. I thought I was, at that time, I was a Roman, and I believed at the altar that I was almost like a priest, actually doing service for God. I used to love my altar boy suit.
What age were you at that time? Would that be 13, 12,
Oh,
10,
12,
8?
yeah, 12. The exact, I
Was
tried.
your family very, have a strong faith? Did you
Well,
grow
they
up
would-
in a home that had some sense of going to church?
Oh, you went to church every Sunday. There was no
Did
question
both
there.
of your parents come from the same faith?
Yes, they were both Roman Catholic, yes.
Okay.
And it was, remember that more than anything, this was cultural. It was cultural in aspect. It wasn't so much, it's what you did. And the kids, remember all my kids, my buddies all went to either there or St. Ladislaus, one of the two churches, and all the kids believed pretty much the same. And the parents pretty much the same as well.
Okay.